Lightfoot. How are you? My
I'm
name's
good.
Oscar, and I'm a youth advocate with the Mikva Challenge.
And you should call me Lori.
Lori?
Yes.
All right. Lori, sounds good. We want to start off with an icebreaker question. Can you describe your most embarrassing story with 3 words?
In 3 words,
Yes, 3 words.
I fell on my face. Probably a little more than 3 words, but.
I'll share mine. Dropped 50 cups. And we wanted to start off with our first question. It's going to be an easy one. Why are you running for mayor for the city of Chicago?
Well, I'm running for mayor because I love my city. There's a lot of greatness in this city, but I also recognize that the gap between the haves and the have-not was growing. I grew up in a working-class family that struggled financially, and I grew up at a time when race discrimination and gender discrimination were very much the rules of the day. And coming out of that experience and with a father who was also deaf, I know a lot about and care a lot about social justice, equity, and inclusion. And when I looked across the city in the last few years, what I saw is people who look like me, growing up in families like mine, who were really struggling, and that there was no plan for them. There was no plan to uplift the quality of life in all neighborhoods across the city, and I became deeply concerned about that. I'm an advocate by nature, and so I felt like I needed to do everything that I could to use my voice to be an advocate for those people whose voices needed to be heard. I certainly didn't start out thinking about running for mayor, but as I saw the need and frankly didn't see anybody else at the time who was stepping up and articulating the same kind of values that I had in a way that I felt like they should be talking, I knew that it was important for me to step up. So that's what made me get into the race way back in May of 2018 while Rahm Emanuel was still running.
That sounds great. We have another question, and we gathered a lot of these questions from 50 young people around the city. And one of the pressing issues that the youth cared about was education.
Sure.
And where do you see the school system in 20 years?
Well, I hope we have a school system where we have good quality elementary and high schools in every neighborhood. Unfortunately, where we are today, we have some incredible high schools that certainly are the best in the nation. But if you look at the data from across the city, way too many of our kids are traveling great distances every day for the hope of a decent education. It's not there in their neighborhood schools. I think neighborhood schools are incredibly important. As a public school kid myself, my school wasn't fantastic, but I walked to school every day with the kids from my neighborhood. Our parents all knew each other. And so we had this community of interest and commonality really built around the school, and we regarded the school as a neighborhood asset. I would like to get to that point, maybe back to that point here in the city of Chicago. It's incredibly important that we have accessible, safe, good quality schools in every neighborhood. You know, as you know, schools are more than just places of learning. They should be community assets. I like the concept of community schools, and I would look to expand those so that we are providing a range of services for the community, not just during the 9 to 5 school time, but really as something that the community can access at all times of the day and night and on the weekends.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. A lot of community schools are better because I know I travel 45 minutes to get to school.
It's a lot of time.
And it's a lot of time to get there, and I still have to walk another 10 minutes. Another question that we gathered from our youth was, how will you help my community while helping others as well? And this was from Lanye from Albany Park.
Well, look, I think it's really important that we have what I would call kind of a Marshall Plan to focus on uplifting the quality of life in neighborhoods. We have way too many neighborhoods where the unemployment rate is 25% or higher, where too many of our kids, particularly black and brown kids, are living their entire lives in poverty, where violence is raging out of control, and where, frankly, because of high unemployment rates, there isn't a history of work in so many families because there aren't real opportunities. That is a bleak assessment, but a reality for a lot of kids and families and communities across the city. I want to make sure that we do something about that. That's why I said we have a great city, but we have a lot of challenges and opportunities that we have to meet. I want every kid to have a real opportunity to connect up with all the richness that's in the city. Now, what people do with the opportunity is up to them. But when we deprive neighborhoods of resources, when we don't invest in neighborhoods, we are dooming kids and their families and neighborhoods to mediocrity. And that's a problem because I think it undermines the greatness of the city.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Another pressing issue that the youth surveyed was gun safety. Not just the youth, but everybody in general, that it's been a crisis that the city has been facing. And this came from Jalila from Uptown, and she asked, how would you go about regulating gun laws and who's eligible to own a gun?
Look, I think we have to have better leadership at the federal level because this really is an issue that I think resonates across communities across our country. I'm glad that we now have a Democratic governor who has signed regulations of gun dealers here in the state of Illinois, which is an important step. But fundamentally, what we need to do if we're really going to keep communities safe is we have to invest in them. We have to give people hope and connectivity to the legitimate economy. As I'm sure you and young people across the city know, the largest employer in some of our neighborhoods is the illegal drug trade. And when we have that as a reality, violence is going to follow. We need to be much more proactive in stopping the guns from coming into our city from Indiana, from Wisconsin, from Michigan, and from some of the southern states, which means we have to have federal law enforcement really step up and lead on this issue. But fundamentally, if we treat this epidemic of violence like the public health crisis that it is, that means we look at the root causes of the violence and we focus on mitigating those problems, because it's not just a law enforcement lock 'em up issue. It really isn't. We've got to give people real hope, real connectivity to legitimate economy so they have hope and investment in not only today, tomorrow, and the future.
And for our final question is, there's a lot of youth obviously that are under 18 and can't vote. So how are you going to represent them in your office and listen to their needs?
Well, I think there's a lot of 18-year-olds, though, who are still in school who can vote. And it's really important for young people who have the ability to vote to register and then to come out. You know, if young people across the city stepped up and voted at numbers commensurate with their eligible voters, we would transform this city. We wouldn't have a city that is stuck in the past, but is looking for the future and frankly creating an environment, whether it's in schools, whether it's our finances, all across the city, that is much more responsive to the future, which is what we need to be focused on. We need to keep our young people in the city. We're not going to be able to do that if they don't feel like they are safe. We're not going to be able to do that if they don't feel like they've got jobs that are going to be able to afford them a good living. And we're not going to be able to do that if they feel like they don't have affordable housing options. We need to hear more from young people, and they need to step up and be accounted for, because they're clearly one of the most important constituencies in our city.
Yep, I agree. For those 14, 15, 16, 17-year-olds that can vote, how do you see them as the future of Chicago?
Well, they are the future of Chicago. I remember going to the March for Our Lives event here in Chicago. There's a big one in Washington, but there was also a great one here in Chicago. And I told people coming out of that experience it was both heartbreaking, but also incredibly encouraging. The heartbreaking point, of course, was there were so many young people who took the stage, and person after person from a lot of different backgrounds and neighborhoods in the city who had experienced the trauma of gun violence. But the thing that was incredibly encouraging is how thoughtful, how articulate, and how passionate these young folks were about really making a difference in the quality of life in their families, in their neighborhoods, in their schools. We can never lose sight of the fact that we have really great, smart, able kids all over our city. And I think we have to spend more time focusing on that and uplifting them because they are truly our future, but also really remarkable individuals who persevere despite some challenging odds. One of my favorite things to do is go to the Louder Than a Bomb contest, both the Indy finals and the team finals. And you see at this incredible theater, literally thousands of kids from all over the city who were there having an incredible time and watching their peers perform, and frankly, without seemingly any nerves, in front of this large crowd of their peers. I mean, it's a remarkable experience. I tell people about it all the time. But again, what that underscores to me is we have amazing talent in this city, and we got to do everything we can to nurture it and treasure it.
Yep, I agree, because eventually we're going to be the ones leading the country and running for mayor
Absolutely.
and president.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for your time today.
No,
Really
my
appreciate
pleasure.
it.
Absolutely.